Hello and welcome to the show. Now, psychology is a very important subject within the context of South Africa. So that's something I decided to bring Dr. Ashley Smyth from SACAP, the South African College of Applied Psychology, to discuss that with us. What we're going to do first is discuss SACAP itself and then look at their place within their space in South Africa. Dr. Smyth, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, psychology is indeed a very interesting subject, which
True.
I've been finding out
True.
of late. But to look at psychology, I'd like to look at your institution first. And
Okay.
that's SACAP, the South African College of Applied Psychology. Some of the history, the present operation, and some of the future plans. And then we can look at psychology itself.
Good.
Okay, so SACAP, where did it all start?
It's a very interesting story. It began in 1997, so next year we'll be 20 years old, which is hard to believe. I've been the Dean of the college since 2010, so I'm also 6 years in the college now. But the college began really as the brainchild of a clinical psychologist by the name of Mark Feitelberg. Mark, interestingly enough, is still, his mother works for the college, so we still have connections with Mark. But Mark was working in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, and he was lecturing part-time at the Australian College of Applied Psychology. And he was extremely interested in their model. First of all, by the name applied psychology. What is an applied psychology? What do we mean by applied? And what Mark witnessed was a type of training where psychology as a discipline was applied to community realities. And that really was something for him very different, because normally if you're doing any sort of studies in psychology, you have 3 or more full years of theory before you ever really get to understand psychology in an applied sense.
Like most courses.
Like most courses. And right from the outset, what Mark noticed was that psychology was being applied at the Australian College of Applied Psychology. Now, how was it being applied? There were a number of distinctive features of the way in which psychology was being applied. One was in very small interactive classes. It's very difficult to talk about an applied anything in a very large setting. You know, a plenary setting, a large audience setting. But here was training that was being done in a very small, interactive classroom environment where students were really having to come to grips.
And this obviously increased the intensity of the information that was being imparted.
It does. And you see, what it does is it provides a richness to the study of any discipline, not least psychology, when you're working in a much more facilitated environment. And also, if you're really going to apply psychology, you're going to look at community realities. You're going to be bringing the community into the classroom. And this was very interesting for Mark, because he was a clinical psychologist coming with all of his years of expertise as a professional, as a clinical professional, and he was bringing that expertise into the classroom. So the idea of an educator who was also a practitioner was a very, very positive piece of the training.
It was just the right mixture to get this model going.
So it was a professional who was training in an educational space. It was very facilitated, and it was very applied. And I think it just lit a spark for Mark. Mark was from South Africa, living and working in Australia, and he had this idea, wouldn't this be fantastic to bring it back to South Africa, particularly to Cape Town, and do exactly the same sort of thing? So he came back and he began exactly that in a small house in Wynberg, applying psychology in a small interactive environment with professionals who were working in the field but coming in as educators, and recognizing the tremendous needs in South Africa. To Mark, this was a very special way of teaching and working. teaching and learning. So by the time I got there in 2010, this had been going on now for 13 years. And
so you were still at that time operating from the home environment, or was it
like it was actually in a home environment.
Informal at the time.
It was semi-informal, short course driven. One program, it's very different to SACAP today, but one program. People could come as they found time to come, get training that they could immediately begin to apply out in the community, and that was really the start of the South African College of Applied Psychology.
It's a very interesting story because when I looked at SACAP, and I mentioned this to you, that I looked at SACAP from the point of view that it plays a role within society. It's not only offering the courses and as an institution, but there was a deeper role and there was a deeper mission which I saw, and that was to assist within the space of psychology in the context of South Africa. So what do we see today at SACAP? So I visited there recently, as you know, I've become a student there, which my viewers are still busy finding out. But I felt the need personally. And so I visited the college and I saw this very nice environment of people that were sort of doing what they do in a very relaxed mode, and I immediately became attracted to all of that. What do we see in the current operations, the curricula, and the modus operandi of SACAP?
Well, let's use your what attracted you as the basis of what I'm going to say. What attracted you was, I think, a number of features. One, that we're inspired by a vision of an empowered society in a country that experiences high levels of disempowerment, marginalization. To have a type of training where you could take skills and immediately begin to see the way in which they could be applied in the community is very empowering. So our vision is about empowering our society. What do we want? How do we want to empower? We want to get people studying who, one, are very self-aware and very strong within themselves and are trained to be strong. Ultimately, people who are in touch with themselves. So good psychology is in essence putting you in touch with yourself, understanding yourself, in touch with their families, and you know the level of family breakdown that we experience in South Africa, and also in touch with their community. Now, I think what resonated with you was you're probably a person who's in touch with yourself, you're in touch with your family, you're in touch with your community, and you want to get further training. It's more of an enrichment, not so much meeting your need, but through the training that you get to meet the needs of others.
To enhance that current model and to do that professionally.
And that's our vision, actually. We're inspired by that. We want to see empowerment. We want to see trained people who are really in touch with themselves and then get in touch with others in a very meaningful way. And I guess the core business of who we are and what we do in every course that we provide, every program that we provide, is not only strengthening you, but also giving you tools, instruments, expertise that you can apply in your own context, in your own situation. And I know in your case that you're very in touch with many community needs. So for us, you're the ideal type of person who we would like to train in order that you become more skilled, more expert, more experienced, and more relevant and more effective. So that's really what we're about.
Thank you, Dr. Smyth. I take that as a compliment. So we look at SACAP at the same time, and we see that registered as an institution of higher education, and that makes a big difference. So it's not just an ordinary college sitting out there that's issuing some diplomas or certificates, and after that you can go out in the field and counsel some people on some issues. We're not talking about that level at all. We're talking about degrees that are recognized in various parts of the world and in South Africa that allows you to become a professional psychologist and put those expertise in on a different level. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think that has been the bulk of the work that I've personally been involved with.
In setting that up?
In setting that up, yeah. When I came to the institution, we were offering one vocational diploma. We realized that that was always going to be limited. Yes, it was accredited by the Council on Higher Education. It was registered on the SACAP website, but it simply wasn't enough. So what we have done is, actually it's very interesting even talking about it. What we have done is we have developed programs in 3 tracks, 3 streams, for want of a better word. First of all, there is the vocational space. Now the vocational, any courses that are in the vocational space, by virtue of them being called vocational, means that you have to have them work ready. They've got to be able to be skills-based, that you can actually take out and apply.
So you're looking at a more sort of practical approach?
Very practical, very vocational in their orientation. And we offer 3 programs in the vocational space, and they are a 1-year, effectively a gap program in counseling and communication skills, a 1-year advanced certificate in counseling and communication skills, and a 2-year diploma in counseling and communication. Now they are, each of them have what we call a scope of practice. They have core competencies within each of these, and there's a very limited scope of practice. So we also train you not only just in terms of the skills, but how to apply those skills. So for example, in the advanced certificate in counseling and communication skills, in the diploma in counseling and communication, there's also what we call field work or work integrated learning, and towards the end of those 2 programs, you can do 200 hours of community work under supervision.
And that's part of the qualification?
It's part of the qualification. Now, I don't know of anywhere in the country, or maybe I do, I know of one other program, but one other college that offers the same. But really, in broad terms, you will just not get that level of community experience as part of a 1-year or a 2-year program. So that's the vocational space. Then the second, I think, most significant area that we have been involved in developing over the last 5 years are degree programs. Now, these degree programs are much more aligned to where do you want to go into the future? What do you want to do in the future? So, for example, if you ever wanted to train as a psychologist, we can put you on the road for that. By a 3-year undergraduate program called, it's quite a long title, but it's called a Bachelor of Applied Social Science degree, which is a very intense psychology major. 3 years, and if you are successful and you get the prerequisite grades that you would need, you can go on to do an honors degree in a Bachelor of Social Science honors degree. So they're the undergraduate and postgraduate tracks. They're what we call the academic track. And from there, you can then apply to go on for another 2 years of study at a master's level in the fields of educational, clinical, research, counseling, psychology. Our particular strength is in the area of counseling psychology. But that enables you to begin to think seriously about a career in psychology. You're not going to actually engage in 3 years of study without some serious intention to ultimately use it professionally. So those are the academic degrees, an undergraduate degree and an honors degree in psychology. So we've got now the vocational programs, we've got the degree programs, and then we have in psychology, I'll talk about another one in a minute, but in psychology we have a 4-year professional degree. Now, the 4-year professional degree, as soon as you mention the word professional, what you have to do is align a professional qualification with a statutory body. In other words, a statutory body would demand that degree in order to be able to recognize that degree in a professional sense. So the bottom rung of the Health Profession Council of South Africa qualification ladder is what we call a Bachelor of Psychology that would enable you to become a registered counselor. 4 years to become a registered counselor. Now, the emphasis and focus of becoming a registered counselor is very critical in our country. It is your first layer of preventative work that can be done to help people in the broader community. Not necessarily so much diagnostic, but very much sort of being the front line of community mental health needs. And so we're very proud of our Bachelor of Psychology degree because it's not only accredited through the Council on Higher Education and on the SACAP framework, but it's also registered with or accredited by the Health Professions Council of South Africa. So we can only take a very limited number into that degree, and it's very intense, it's very applied, 4 years of training, and in the third and fourth year, we've included in that degree 6 months of what we call practicum work, where you're working out in the community under supervision as part of the degree. So those are the three broad categories: vocational, academic, and professional.
I suppose the starting point would be for any student that would want to apply to SACAP would be to determine where does one want to go and what do you want to use these courses for you then to determine where do you fit into before you apply. So I think those are things that maybe students need to look into when they're getting out there, because if someone would want to do a B-Psych, for example, it seems like your heavy one. Why would you want to do that particular course if you're not planning to practice as a psychologist, for example? So I'm not sure if these are some of the questions that students might have as they come along.
And I think you've got to be very careful in your consideration of that. Maybe I should also mention the sort of new kid on the block of our qualifications, and that is that we've also moved into the coaching and leadership space. So as against the...
Is that on the vocational level?
Well, it's on the vocational, it's in the vocational track,
yes,
stream, but it's at a postgraduate level of studies. So you have to have a degree, and we offer a postgraduate diploma in coaching.
I see.
Now that postgraduate diploma in coaching is an 18-month period of study. It again includes a lot of community work, but it's much more into the life coaching, executive coaching space. And we're very excited about it, actually, because we really have put a lot of work into this. It's another accredited qualification, and it really attracts people who are wanting to work as coaches. So it's a professional degree in that if you want to work as a coach, that is, I believe, the program. It's a unique program. That is the program to get into. It's not a master's, nor is it an undergraduate. It sits, I think we're unique on the landscape of offering it at a postgraduate diploma level. So that's another option that you can have. But whatever you choose, I think it does demand careful consideration. I mean, the minute you are investing money into your own development and training, you've got to think, what am I actually investing in? Now, if you go back to our vision, what you're investing in is not only yourself, because we say we want healthy individuals who are in touch with themselves, but they're also in touch with their families and they're also in touch with their communities. So it's not just about training to help yourself, it's also about training to help others. And I guess the thing that most excites me about our type of training is that people are coming in and they are staying, they're not leaving. Now we talk about retention.
Yes.
Retention means that you start and you finish what you started. That's simply what retention means. Now, most universities have high dropout rates in the first year.
So that's more attrition than anything else.
It's attrition.
That's correct.
So we really want people to be very serious in thinking this through. They're not only investing in themselves, they're also investing in their community. We're going to be giving a lot of training which is an applied training, and we don't want to waste that training. We want to keep you, we want to grow you, we want to see you effective out in the community. So you've got to be thinking very carefully about what you want to be doing.
So I look at SACAP and I look at the pragmatic side of SACAP, and what I find interesting is the way that the curricula has been developed from a technological platform point of view. And that has also attracted me, because today we find in South Africa that people are busy doing their own things. There are economic challenges, looking at the economic state of the country at the moment.
True.
Although some people are positive about that, some of us are a bit skeptical about all of that. But be that as it may, people are busy. And SACAP has gone along and looked at how busy people are and have developed things on different platforms for different people. So I sit on the online courses, and all of that seems very interesting. I'm not sure how that would have looked 5 years ago, but I see the latest technology being used to make sure that students get the appropriate information at the appropriate times. And then there's levels of communication that goes on the forums and that sort of thing. That doesn't allow you as an online student to feel that you're out in the cold on your own. That's normally the problem. When you go and study online, people say you are on your own. But you don't feel that you're on your own online with SACAP. Tell me a bit about the systems that you employ to make sure that students feel integrated in what you do.
I wish we could do more than we do. I'm glad to hear you saying that you're finding it helpful. Yeah, the online space is a new space for us. We want to reach obviously online is about reaching as wide an audience as possible. So we've got campuses in Cape Town, we've got another campus in Johannesburg, but the online, I think, is the gateway to a world of need of people who simply can't come onto one of our campuses.
Great. I just want to interject at this stage. The one thing that's critical that I find with your online courses is the fact that when students talk about doing courses online, they feel that they're heading into something alone. And I want to place emphasis on that specifically, because since I joined the course, I've never felt alone. I felt that I was there all the time. And also what it allows you to do, people feel that I register online, so I can go silent and wake up exam times and do what I need to. You cannot do that at SACAP. No. You are being thrown in on a daily basis. I don't think
you're being really monitored very carefully.
I don't think there was ever a day besides the public holiday that I convinced myself that I need to not go online today, which I eventually did. But you need to go online all the time, and you need to interact all the time, because you see everyone else interacting, and it compels you to interact because you're not doing your job for the day. So I feel that students and prospective students should not fear that they would be left in the dark.
I'm glad you've raised the issue of online, as a common perception of online is not online, it's alone. That is the big challenge of online learning. How alone do people feel? If people feel too alone, they're definitely not going to stay on the program.
Of course.
So as part of our design challenge was, how do we develop activities that are sustainable, that create relationship even though you don't have relationship, and so behind the scenes, what you don't see is a team of people who are working full-time to make sure that you do not feel alone. Now, there are a certain number of activities in any online program. I happen to be a presenter in the online space of quite a number of our online courses. But that, as good as it is, and as good as it should be, is never going to be enough. So we actually we have a facilitator who is manages or supervises, facilitates every course that we do. The primary focus of that facilitator is to keep in touch with you personally.
And they do. You feel that
and to write to you and to talk to you. Now, I wish we could move from what we call an asynchronous space, which is we don't have the capacity at this point in time for students to talk to one another, or even face-to-face with the facilitator. So our activities are what we call asynchronous activities. They do not necessarily give the platform for just a direct dialogue. So we've got to come as near as we possibly can to the direct dialogue, to almost the facial dialogue as we can. So we in fact ask students to engage with our facilitators. How are you finding the material? Give us some of your reflections. Talk to us about the content. How are you coping with this? Behind that, again, are others who are managing the administration. So that if you don't know about the technology, you don't know how to work your way through the interface of the technology, there's somebody sitting there who will work on that with you. If, on the other hand, there are other distractions, family problems, emotional needs, financial needs, these are all things that cause people to fall off the platform. Then we have a service element, student services we call it, where we then refer you to somebody who'll say, what's going on? Why are you not coping? What can we help you with? Can we talk to you about it? So I would say that there are 4 different layers to every student's experience. There is the presenter layer, there is the facilitator layer, there is the administration layer, and there is the support layer. Now, in order for a student to fall off the platform, we've got to have failed
all of those.
All of those.
Correct.
Every cent that you have paid is a cent towards investing not only in yourself but in the community out there. So we don't want you to fall off. So you've actually got to fall through the cracks 4 times to really fall off. And I think that that's what I feel confident about. Correct. That it would be very difficult for you just to fall off the map and nobody know about you and, oh, shame, you know, let's just move on. And I think it's working because our retention, in other words, holding you through a program, has actually been quite good relative to maybe what other universities or institutions are experiencing.
I notice you see the model as a horizontal one, falling down. I see it as a vertical model.
Okay.
Because I see this institution that has 4 gates around it, and the gatekeepers of each one of them don't want you to go out, and they'll stop you. Good. So it's like breaking out of prison. You've got a few layers to
no, you've got to get through 4 walls in order to walk out.
Correct. Yeah. So
once you're in, we want to keep you in.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Dr. Smyth, going forward, you talk about SACAP's investment via students into community, and that's a very close topic to my heart, and that's to develop community and understand community. And then look at South Africa as a populace and see that it's a group of people, or a population of people, that has come through a turbulent time in apartheid, and through that we see various economic changes along time, the reparations around apartheid. We see economic depression, we see levels of educational depression because of all of that. And through all of that, again, we apply a layer of bad economy to it as a resultant of that. And with that comes crime, social demeanors, things that maybe other communities don't easily understand, but might be reflective of the previous regimes and institutions. So we see a society that might have a bit of a remnants because of where they've come from, and therefore the need to do what SACAP does, and that is to bring people out of that. The need for more trained individuals working on different levels, servicing a broader community to solve those problems. We see too many people road rage. We see too many people throwing money at people over the counter because of other frustrations that might have happened in the morning. But these are all one big problem in my understanding. You're the psychologist, I'm not. But how does SACAP play that role deeply in solving those issues?
Yeah, that's a different. No. I think it's a good question. Look, I wouldn't like to say that SACAP alone could ever do that.
No.
I think that
your role in that.
I think our role, because it's multifaceted, one has to recognize that it's coming. To make a difference systemically, to make a difference, you've got to come in from many different spaces.
Think about archetypes at the moment.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, systemically, I think it's got to be managed at multiple levels. Our role is to provide resources at a community mental health level. That is our role. At a primary community mental health level. So yes, we allow for ultimately the professional, the trained postmasters professional working in a space that maybe we are not training for at this stage. But I believe that we are really, we're making a difference, but we're recording how we're making a difference. I brought in, we're just about to launch the 2015 Social Impact Report.
2015, yes.
This is the 2014, okay? So we always do it a year before.
Yeah, we'll have a copy of that up on our screen.
So the Social Impact Report is a record that we feel we need to keep about how and where we make the difference. For example, in Cape Town alone, on the Cape Town campus, we have full-time people working in the social impact space, and we have over 100 sites where our students can go and do their fieldwork or their work-integrated learning under supervision. Every one of those sites that we take students to, monitor our students, evaluate our students. We evaluate our students under supervision. And then we provide a report. How effective have we been? How successful have we been? And I can honestly say that I believe that even as a student, never mind as a graduate, even as a student, you can make a difference. I mean, multiply out the number of students who come through our work-integrated learning space from year to year, and you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, because every student is doing 200 hours of work. So multiply it by 10, 2,000, by 20, 4,000. So you're talking about hours and hours and hours of work going into the mental health space already as students. Never mind ultimately what our students ultimately do as graduates. So I feel that that's our space in community mental health, and particularly in primary care. Issues of HIV, issues of guidance in schools, particularly guidance in schools, issues of working out on the street with organizations like Sweat, with street workers. I mean, I feel we are making a difference. We are making an impact. And our social impact is quite profound. Now, we would like to broaden that footprint nationally, if we could. So what does the future hold? I think the future holds more branches of SACAP, more campuses of SACAP, opening elsewhere. I mean, really, I think that our huge work is done at a student level, never mind at a graduate level. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does answer the question. And I think that also looking at the fact that you qualify an X amount of people to work within that space in the populace also adds to that dimension, because that means that this person has, or person X has created a career within psychology, and whether the person is charging for the service or not, it's still helping to solve the problem at hand. And that is that South Africa is in need of certain types of repair. Dr. Smyth, one last question, and that is the aspect of the stigma around mental health. I believe, and I'm not sure what the understanding of this is, but my assumption is that mental health is stigmatized by the fact that you can't go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist because you might be mad, or what are you doing there? There's no need for you to go there. Now, my assumption and observation is that I look at people in the populace moving around and behaving a certain way that they feel might be normal behavior, but could be indicative of smaller psychological disorders which give rise to other problems down the line. I don't want to elaborate too much on that because of you're a qualified person within the field, so I'm just being careful of how I phrase that to you.
Yes.
But my assumption is that there are issues that are not being addressed because South African society don't see them to be problems. But I believe that if I was staying in the United States or Canada, that would clearly be seen as a problem in my child, and I would run off to the next psychologist to resolve the problem so that he or she does not grow up with that particular problem or an expounding factor related to that problem. So we see kids being disorderly, we see violence in schools,
Yes.
we see all these little manifestations going on that could be treated by some level of professional help or not. How do we break that stigma attached to, and how do we speak to South Africans telling them that that little problem is not a little problem. It's a little problem becoming a big problem, but you think it's the norm. How do we communicate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right about mental health. Mental health is stigmatic, or mental illness is stigmatic, not mental health.
I read something interesting. Sorry, just to cut you there. I read something interesting, and that was, I'm not sure in which magazine it was, an online psychology magazine I read recently, the APA Monitor. It's called the APA Monitor. And it says that if psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health practitioners were integrated directly into the hospital environment all the time, the stigma would be less. Because your other doctors would be referring you simply to the next department, so the stigma is less. I'm not sure if you agree with all of that.
Well, look, I think the issue of stigma is very big when it comes to mental illness. And the only way to beat stigma is education. That is the only way. So people need to be educated about mental illness. They're not being educated enough. The other problem is transparency. That mental illness is no different to any other illness. I mean, the reality is whether you have a cold or flu or you've had an amputation or whatever you've had, mental illness is just another type of need that needs to be addressed. The trouble is the history of mental health has been damaged by the stereotypical view of shutting people away if they are mentally ill. On the other hand, there is the other problem of letting people loose out into the community without treatment for mental health. And then there is the fear of being judged by families, by the community, if you are mentally ill. So this huge amount of education has to happen. I think SACAP has in part a responsibility to open the doors of better education about mental illness. Like we're not the only institution that has to do that, but I think there is that need. The other challenge, of course, is how to connect with where education needs to go. And unfortunately, the professional status of psychology is such that most graduates, particularly at a postmaster's level, are not going back into the state system. They're going into private practice.
Correct.
And so most people don't have access to the resources that are available out there. And sadly, there are not enough people being trained at that level anyway. So I think where SACAP comes in is we're providing training with a view to applying that training at different levels of what we offer in terms of qualifications. So we offer a particular category of expertise that can be applied to community realities from a one-year course to a 4-year program. And I think the other thing that we do is in the Bachelor of Psychology degree, we're wanting to get people out at the registered counselor level who can really meet mental health needs at a primary health care level and give people exposure to how they can be helped. I think a lot of people just don't know how they can be helped.
Correct.
That's a tragedy.
I've been using the slight analogy of saying that So if something's wrong with your heart, for example, we need to go to a cardiologist, and we tend to run to the cardiologist when there's a problem. Likewise, the brain could be also an organ that could have problems, from neurochemical imbalances to all kinds of things.
True.
And so there's that misconception also where, for example, an issue like depression could be an imbalance in hormones or neurochemicals.
True.
But for some odd reason, we find the religious leaders today and community leaders telling people that are depressed, no, but you just need to read your text a bit more and the problem will be resolved. I think there's also an education issue there, where this is an actual physiological problem that is being manifested into a problem of theology.
Problem.
Correct, yes. So there's all those kind of things that need to
that's back to education. And I think that there are a lot of people working in various religious organizations who have tapped into the fact that they too need training.
Correct.
They need better training. They need better insight. They need better skills. And I think that there has been a shift there where people are saying, okay, it's not just a spiritual problem. It may be leading to a spiritual reality where people feel out of touch with God. But at the end of the day, it's about knowing what to do in a situation. I happen to be one of those, have been in my past, one of those religious leaders. And I was very grateful for the training that I had, because it gave me insight into people helping skills that I wouldn't have otherwise had. So I think that it is about education, education, and education.
Dr. Smyth, on a parting note, advice to any students or prospective students out there, perhaps coming out of school, deciding what to do with their lives, a reason to do psychology?
At the heart of health is mental state. True? At the heart of good health is mental state. Whether you are actually even physically ill, it still comes back to mental state. And I really believe that, I mean, you've only got to look around in our society and you've got to see the level of brokenness. I believe that psychology is not just a filler. I think it's much more than that. It's getting to the core of the need. And I would always encourage studying psychology, particularly if you have a bent towards or a desire to help others. Study psychology.
Dr. Smyth, thank you for coming on the show. I'd like to have you again very soon. Perhaps there are some issues for us to talk about. Maybe we can take certain subjects down the line. For example, spousal abuse. We could take on various aspects of maybe alcohol and abuse of alcohol in society. We could take various subjects, and I'd like to invite SACAP back into this space to maybe talk about these subjects as we go along with yourself and various other lecturers at the institution. I must tell you that I'm really enjoying my experience at SACAP, and I'm looking to spending the next couple of years with you guys, within the four walls, of course. Dr. Ashley Smyth, the Academic Dean of SACAP, the South African College of Applied Psychology, and you can clearly see the very reason why psychology plays a major role within the context of South Africa. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.